Buying this house was the ultimate milestone for me. Years of hard work had finally paid off, and now I was settling into my dream home, a stunning, modern house in a wealthy suburban neighborhood. The kind of place with neatly trimmed lawns, fancy street lamps, and homeowners who probably spent their weekends discussing property values over wine tastings. It was the picture of perfection, and I was ready to enjoy it. The first few days were a blur of unpacking, celebrating, and having friends and family over to see the place. My driveway was packed. My 2 cars sat in their usual spots, while a few guests had parked theirs along the curb. It wasn't a big deal. Everyone in the neighborhood had spacious driveways, and the streets were wide enough to accommodate visitors. I should have known it was too good to last. On my 3rd afternoon there, I spotted her before she even spoke. A middle-aged white woman striding across my lawn like she owned the place, a clipboard clutched in one hand and an air of entitlement radiating from her stiff posture. She had that signature Karen look, over-processed blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, and the unmistakable expression of someone about to deliver unsolicited authority. I barely had time to process her arrival before she was standing at my front step, offering me a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi there. I'm Karen. I run the HOA," she announced, her tone already teetering between fake friendliness and condescension. "We like to keep things nice and orderly around here, so I just wanted to go over a few things with you." I wasn't sure if I should be amused or annoyed. I had barely finished moving in, and this woman was already coming over to go over a few things? But instead of arguing, I just nodded, waiting to see where this was going. That's when she glanced over my shoulder at my driveway, her face tightening. "You seem to have quite a few vehicles here," she said, the sweetness in her voice forced. "We have rules about how many cars can be parked in a driveway. We like to keep the streets looking clean." I raised an eyebrow. "I own those cars," I said simply. "And my guests are just visiting." Karen's lips pursed like she had just sucked on a lemon. "Well, we have regulations about this sort of thing," she continued, tapping her clipboard. "It's important that everyone follows them." I exhaled through my nose, already seeing where this was headed. She wasn't here to welcome me. She was here to make it clear that I wasn't one of them. And she was about to make that crystal clear. Karen barely waited for my response before flipping through the pages on her clipboard. "We have strict HOA policies about vehicle storage," she began, eyes scanning whatever nonsense was written there. "Driveways should remain clear except for essential vehicles. Guests should use designated visitor parking, which," she made a grand gesture toward the end of the street, "is down there." I glanced down the road. The so-called visitor parking was a tiny patch barely big enough for 2 compact cars. Completely impractical, not to mention pointless since my own driveway had more than enough space for my cars. "I'm parked on my own property," I said, keeping my tone even. "And my guests are just visiting. They'll be gone by tonight." Karen wasn't satisfied. She adjusted her sunglasses, pressing forward like a prosecutor building a case. "Well, it's about maintaining the neighborhood aesthetic," she continued, smiling like she was doing me a favor. "We don't want things looking cluttered. You understand, right?" That last sentence hung in the air a little too long, like a loaded question. I folded my arms. "Are my cars breaking any actual laws?" Karen's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "No. But they violate HOA standards. And we take that very seriously around here." I could already tell this was less about cars and more about control. Karen had probably gotten used to bossing people around, making herself the queen of this little suburban kingdom. And now, here I was, new blood, a black man in a neighborhood where she clearly didn't expect me to belong. She gave me a practiced, pitying look. "You'll be getting a fine in the mail," she said with mock sympathy. "But don't worry, it's just a warning for now." I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. "A fine?" Karen nodded, clearly pleased with herself. "We issue penalties for violations like this. If you don't comply, we escalate it to towing." Towing. I stared at her, waiting for her to realize how ridiculous she sounded. She was acting like she had the legal authority to dictate what I could do on my own property. "Listen," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I own my house. I own my driveway. I own my cars. If someone's breaking the law, it's not me." Karen's expression darkened for the first time. She had expected pushback, but not confidence. "Well, rules are rules," she snapped, the fake politeness slipping. "And this is an HOA community. You don't want to get off on the wrong foot?" There it was, the thinly veiled threat. The attempt to make me fall in line. Too bad for her. I wasn't going to play her game. I just smiled. "I guess we'll see about that." Because what Karen didn't know was that she wasn't just messing with some new homeowner. She was messing with the actual owner of the neighborhood. And she was about to find out the hard way. I knew Karen wouldn't back down easily. People like her never did. At first, I thought she might drop it after our initial conversation, but I underestimated how much free time she had to make my life her personal mission. Over the next few days, she doubled down on her passive-aggressive crusade, finding new ways to flex her imaginary authority. First, it was the note. Every morning, I'd wake up to find neatly folded papers tucked under my windshield wipers. Printed, bold, all caps, stuff like HOA Regulation 4.2 violation, remove excess vehicles immediately, or final warning, non-compliant parking will result in escalation. She wasn't even trying to hide the pettiness anymore. Then came the threats. One evening, I caught her walking up and down my driveway, inspecting my cars like a boot camp sergeant before a vehicle inspection. When she noticed me watching from the porch, she put on her best concerned citizen act. "These cars will be towed if they're not gone by the weekend," she declared, arms crossed. I just smiled. "By who?" She blinked. "Excuse me? Who exactly is towing them?" I asked. "Because I've already checked the local ordinances. Unless my cars are blocking a hydrant or an emergency route, they're not going anywhere." Her face twitched, but she wasn't ready to quit. Not yet. That's when she moved to the neighbors. I started noticing some of them acting differently, less friendly, more hesitant. A couple of them stopped waving when I walked outside. One man, who had been pleasant when I first moved in, now avoided eye contact entirely. I wasn't an idiot. Karen had been making her rounds, probably whispering in ears about how I was some kind of menace to their peaceful little community. Maybe she told them I was breaking HOA rules, lowering their property values, or something equally ridiculous. What she didn't know was that I was already 10 steps ahead. I played along, letting her feel like she was winning. I let her scribble her useless notes, parade around with her empty threats, and stir up whatever neighborhood drama she wanted. Because what Karen didn't know, and what made all of this even funnier, was that she wasn't just harassing some random homeowner. She was harassing her landlord. And she was about to find out exactly what that meant. The moment finally came when Karen decided to make things official. On a bright Saturday morning, she strutted up to my door with a letter in hand. Not a casual note this time. A full, printed violation notice with an HOA letterhead and a signature at the bottom. She knocked like she was about to serve me court papers. I took my time answering. When I finally opened the door, she gave me a smug little smile and handed over the envelope. "This is your final warning," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Failure to comply will result in further action." I unfolded the paper and skimmed through it. The usual nonsense about unauthorized parking and noncompliance with community standards. A deadline. Some empty threats about penalties. I exhaled through my nose, biting back a laugh. Then, I looked up at Karen and decided it was time to end the game. "Karen," I said slowly, tucking the letter into my pocket. "I don't think you've done your research." Her fake smile wavered. "Excuse me?" I gestured toward the houses around us. "I own this house, and about 10 more on this street." The color drained from her face. I let the words sink in before continuing. "I bought most of these properties as investments a few years back," I said. I own them. And most of the people around here? They're renting from me. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. So technically, you're living on my property. That was it. Checkmate. Karen's smugness shattered in an instant. Her fingers clenched around her clipboard like she wanted to snap it in half. She looked around, as if hoping someone would come to her rescue, but there was no one. I could see the realization hitting her. All those warnings she sent me? Useless. The notes? The threats? Nothing. I leaned in slightly. So tell me, I said, lowering my voice just enough to twist the knife. Who exactly are you planning to tow my cars? Karen's lips parted, but she had no answer. For the first time since we met, she was completely speechless. And damn, did it feel good. For a solid 5 seconds, Karen just stood there. Frozen. It was like her brain had completely shut down, trying to process the fact that she had been barking orders at the landlord of half the neighborhood. Then, right on cue, her face drained of all color. Well, she stammered, her clipboard trembling in her hands. This is all just a big misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? That was rich. Karen, I said, folding my arms. You've been threatening me with fines, trying to tow my cars, and turning neighbors against me. Now, all of a sudden, it's just a misunderstanding? She forced a laugh. I was just trying to uphold community standard. You understand, right? Oh, I understand, I said, stepping onto my porch. I understand that you've been harassing a property owner, and not just any property owner. One who has the power to change things around here. Her eyes darted from me to the houses around us, and I could see the gears turning in her head. She was scrambling, desperate to claw back some control. You see, I continued, as the owner of multiple properties in this community, I have a little more say than the average homeowner. And funny enough, I've been looking into dissolving the HOA. Her eyes widened. Why you can't do that? I shrugged. Actually, I can. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Because she knew I was right. HOAs are run by the homeowners, and I owned more property than anyone here. That meant I had more votes, more power. And if I wanted the HOA gone, all I had to do was put it to a vote with the other property owners, most of whom were my tenants. Karen was finished. No more HOA, Karen, I said, enjoying every second of her unraveling. No more pointless rules, no more ridiculous fines, no more fake authority. She actually wobbled on her feet like she might pass out. But we need the HOA, she blurted. It keeps the community in order. It lets you boss people around, I cut in. Well, guess what? That's over. Her whole body tensed, her lips pressed into a thin line as the reality of her downfall finally sank in. Karen had spent weeks trying to control me, to bully me out of a neighborhood that I owned. And now? She had nothing. Karen tried. Oh, she tried. After I announced the HOA's dissolution, she scrambled to rally the other homeowners. She knocked on doors, handed out flyers, and even tried to start a petition to save the community. But here's the thing. Nobody wanted to save it. Most of the neighbors were relieved. No more arbitrary fines. No more Karen patrolling the block like a wannabe sheriff. No more stupid rules about mailbox colors or how long you could leave your trash bins out. The people she thought were on her side? They weren't. They had only tolerated her because she had the HOA backing her up. Without it, she was just an annoying neighbor no one listened to anymore. She had no authority. No power. Nothing. And it ate her alive. For weeks, she sulked. She shot me dirty looks every time she saw me, but she couldn't do a damn thing about it. Her desperate attempts to enforce rules that no longer existed made her the neighborhood joke. And then, she snapped. One day, a for sale sign popped up in front of her house. Karen couldn't handle it. She needed control, and without it, she was miserable. So, she did the only thing she could. She packed up and left. But here's the best part. On the day of her move, I threw a block party. Biggest one the neighborhood had ever seen. Food, music, fireworks, the whole 9 yards. almost every homeowner and tenant showed up. People were laughing, drinking, and celebrating. And Karen? She had to drive through the middle of it, watching as the very people she had tried to control cheered her departure. She didn't even look at me as she left. Moral of the story? Don't mess with the real owner of the block.